They say loyalty is a virtue. But in the corporate world, it's more often a weakness, one that predators like him can sniff from a mile away. My name is Eliza Monroe. I was 35 years old and had been working at Cormier and Tate Solutions for nearly 8 years. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't loud, but I delivered, on time, every time. I was the dependable one, the one who trained new hires without being asked, the one who stayed late to fix presentations someone else messed up, the one who never took credit, but always gave it, and I was the perfect target. My boss, Nathan Kessler, had a Harvard MBA, a polished grin, and the kind of charm that made people overlook the rot beneath. To outsiders, he was the golden boy. To insiders like me, a puppet master. And I didn't even see the strings tightening until it was far too late. It started small. A missing slide from a quarterly report I had supposedly finished. Then a forgotten client callback he insisted I had confirmed. Little things, annoying things. Things that could be chalked up to stress or oversight, but they weren't accidents. The real blow came at the annual strategy presentation, a high-stakes meeting with our executive board. I had worked on that presentation for over a month. Research, analytics, projections, every slide had my fingerprints. Nathan asked me to send him the final version the night before, just for a quick polish. The next morning, he presented it as his own, word for word, slide for slide. My work, my voice, my late nights, it was all him now. And I stood at the side of the room like a ghost. When the applause came, I clapped too. Like a fool, I should have walked, should have screamed, should have set fire to that boardroom. But I didn't. I swallowed the humiliation like I'd swallowed so many things in that office. I told myself it was just one time, that maybe he'd mention me later. He didn't. Worse. He turned it into leverage. 3 weeks later, I was called into HR. A formal complaint had been filed. Misconduct, breach of data policy, negligence. It was my name on the document, my logins, my supposed unauthorized edits to sensitive documents. I was suspended pending investigation. Nathan called it unfortunate and told me he hoped things cleared up soon. His eyes said otherwise. That's when I realized this wasn't incompetence. This was premeditated. Nathan hadn't just stolen my work. He had laid a trap. And I had walked right into it. I spent the next 2 weeks in a fog. Shame, rage, helplessness. But when the tears dried, something else settled in their place. Clarity. Nathan thought he'd broken me. Thought I was just another cog, easily replaced, easily silenced. But I wasn't. I was patient. I was observant. And I had just enough dirt on him to begin digging deeper. He wanted a ghost? I'd give him one that would haunt every lie he ever told. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of his reckoning. They say loyalty is a virtue, but in the corporate world, it's more often a weakness, one that predators like him can sniff from a mile away. My name is Eliza Monroe. I was 35 years old and had been working at Cormier and Tate Solutions for nearly 8 years. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't loud, but I delivered, on time, every time. I was the dependable one, the one who trained new hires without being asked, the one who stayed late to fix presentations someone else messed up, the one who never took credit, but always gave it, and I was the perfect target. My boss, Nathan Kessler, had a Harvard MBA, a polished grin, and the kind of charm that made people overlook the rot beneath. To outsiders, he was the golden boy. To insiders like me, a puppet master. And I didn't even see the strings tightening until it was far too late. It started small. A missing slide from a quarterly report I had supposedly finished. Then a forgotten client callback he insisted I had confirmed. Little things, annoying things. Things that could be chalked up to stress or oversight, but they weren't accidents. The real blow came at the annual strategy presentation, a high-stakes meeting with our executive board. I had worked on that presentation for over a month. Research, analytics, projections, every slide had my fingerprints. Nathan asked me to send him the final version the night before, just for a quick polish. The next morning, he presented it as his own, word for word, slide for slide. My work, my voice, my late nights. It was all him now. And I stood at the side of the room like a ghost. When the applause came, I clapped too. Like a fool, I should have walked, should have screamed, should have set fire to that boardroom. But I didn't. I swallowed the humiliation like I'd swallowed so many things in that office. I told myself it was just one time, that maybe he'd mention me later. He didn't. Worse. He turned it into leverage. 3 weeks later, I was called into HR. A formal complaint had been filed. Misconduct, breach of data policy, negligence. It was my name on the document, my logins, my supposed unauthorized edits to sensitive documents. I was suspended pending investigation. Nathan called it unfortunate and told me he hoped things cleared up soon. His eyes said otherwise. That's when I realized this wasn't incompetence. This was premeditated. Nathan hadn't just stolen my work. He had laid a trap. And I had walked right into it. I spent the next 2 weeks in a fog. Shame, rage, helplessness. But when the tears dried, something else settled in their place. Clarity. Nathan thought he'd broken me. Thought I was just another cog, easily replaced, easily silenced. But I wasn't. I was patient. I was observant. And I had just enough dirt on him to begin digging deeper. He wanted a ghost? I'd give him one that would haunt every lie he ever told. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of his reckoning. The first few days of my suspension felt like drifting in a storm with no compass. I barely ate. I barely slept. I just kept replaying it all. Every meeting, every email, every moment I'd trusted Nathan Kessler. But one morning, I woke up before dawn with a strange sense of purpose. The kind you feel when something clicks into place. If Nathan wanted a war, I'd give him one. But I wouldn't rush in with fire and fury. I would gather, observe, plan. I still had access to my work laptop. It hadn't revoked my credentials. Probably. An oversight, or more likely, a trap. Nathan wanted to watch me squirm. He wanted me to try something stupid, something emotional. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. Instead, I started where any meticulous revenge begins, with documentation. My hands trembled as I opened the first shared drive. Decades of files stared back at me, most of them irrelevant. But I knew what I was looking for: presentations, proposal drafts, datasets, anything I had created that bore Nathan's name. It was all still there, hiding in plain sight. I opened the presentation from the strategy meeting, the one that got him all those standing ovations. I went into the metadata. The original creation date? Mine. The IP address? Mine. The edits made the night before? His. I screenshotted everything. Then I remembered the Jenkins account, a medium-sized client from the year before. The project had gone smoothly, but the final contract Nathan submitted had puzzled me back then. Now I saw it with new eyes. I found my old drafts. Buried inside one of them was a private comment I had left for myself, just a note to adjust phrasing later. That exact wording showed up, unchanged, in the contract Nathan turned in. It wasn't coincidence. It was theft. But I needed more than scattered breadcrumbs. I needed a pattern, a story, a damning narrative that even HR couldn't ignore. That's when I thought of Angela Tran. Angela had worked as an analyst for 2 years before she suddenly resigned. No farewell email, no LinkedIn announcement. Just gone. She'd been sharp, reliable. I remembered how Nathan used to sing her praises in meetings. Until he stopped mentioning her altogether, I found her on LinkedIn. Her profile was vague, a generic consultant title, but I messaged her anyway. Hi, Angela. I know this is out of the blue, but did you ever feel like Nathan took credit for your work? Asking for more than just myself, she responded 10 minutes later. He destroyed my career. What happened to you? That one sentence lit a fire in me. We scheduled a call. Her voice cracked with emotion as she described how she was pushed out, Projects stolen, emails mysteriously lost, HR complaints fabricated. She had tried to fight it, but Nathan was slippery, charming, untouchable. But she had receipts, emails, timestamps. Even a voice memo she'd recorded when Nathan drunkenly bragged at a company party about being the brains behind a project she led. We made a plan. I started compiling everything into a secure folder. We called it the Reckoning file. Each entry was tagged, dated, annotated. Nathan's pattern was clear. Find competent women, exploit them, then discard them with manufactured scandal. It wasn't just unethical. It was systematic abuse. I reached out to 2 more former colleagues. One ignored me. The other, a woman named Priya who used to run ops. She agreed to talk. Her story was the same, except she added a disturbing twist. She had once caught Nathan copying files onto a flash drive marked personal. Files that contained internal salary spreadsheets. That one detail changed everything. If Nathan had used those files to give himself leverage, like negotiating his own bonus based on insider info, he could be in legal trouble. Big trouble. It gave me an opening, a crack in his armor. Something HR couldn't sweep under the rug. So I started mapping it out. I created timelines, cross-referenced HR complaints, looked into who else left under strange circumstances. The list kept growing. Angela and I set up weekly calls. We shared findings, vented frustrations, and fueled each other's determination. We weren't just fighting for revenge anymore. We were fighting for justice. For every voice Nathan had silenced. Late one night, I stared at the folder on my desktop, labeled simply NRK, Nathan Richard Kessler. It was filling up fast. But it wasn't ready yet. Not until I had one last piece, and I knew exactly where to find it. Nathan's right hand, Madison Blake, had been with him for 5 years. Loyal, efficient, silent. But I knew something she didn't. Loyalty like hers is often rewarded with betrayal. I drafted the message. Short, simple, powerful. Hi, Madison. I think you know what Nathan did to Angela. And me. I also think he has you next. Let's talk. I hesitated, then hit send. The first thread had been pulled. Soon the whole thing would unravel. Madison Blake didn't answer right away. I waited 3 days. 3 long, torturous days of refreshing my inbox, checking my messages, rereading the last thing I sent. I think you know what Nathan did to Angela. And me. I also think he has you next. Let's talk. I knew it was risky. If Madison was as loyal as she looked, she could have forwarded it straight to Nathan. But I didn't think she would. I'd seen something in her eyes lately. Hesitation, flickers of doubt, even fear. On the 4th morning, she replied. Where? That was all. No punctuation, no context. But it was all I needed. We met in the quiet corner of a rundown coffee shop on 10th Street. No one from Cormier and Tate ever came here. It was neutral ground. She showed up in a trench coat and sunglasses like she was stepping into a spy novel. I didn't smile. Neither did she. Talk, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I took a breath. I know Nathan's been using you. Her jaw tightened. Everyone uses everyone in that place. Not like this. He's planning to throw you under the bus, just like he did to Angela, just like he tried with me. She stared down at her. Coffee. No cream. No sugar. Black, bitter, like the expression on her face. I don't care about Angela, she muttered. But you, I leaned in. He framed me, made it look like I tampered with client files. You know I didn't. You helped compile those reports. Madison's eyes finally lifted. I know. And there it was. Confirmation. I have a folder, I continued. Proof of everything. And I'm not the only one. Angela, Priya, others. We're building something, but we need someone on the inside. You want me to be your spy. I want you to survive this. She didn't answer, but her silence wasn't rejection. It was calculation. After a long pause, she said, "Nathan has a private server." That stopped me cold. What? He doesn't trust the company cloud. Keeps sensitive stuff on an encrypted drive. Physical backup, too. He carries it with him. Red USB. Always in his inside jacket pocket. I blinked. Are you serious? She nodded. He calls it the vault. What's in it? No idea, but he freaks out if it's out of sight. I once saw him cancel a meeting just because he couldn't find the jacket. My mind was spinning. If that USB held half of what I suspected, it could be the bullet we needed. Proof of misconduct, fraud, maybe worse, but I couldn't just grab it. I needed a plan. Madison took a sip of her coffee. You didn't hear this? From me. If he finds out? He won't, I said quickly. I promise. She stood to leave, dropping a crumpled napkin on the table. I never met you. I opened it after she left. A password. Ascendant 2020. Followed by one line, Tuesday. 7:45 p.m. Fitness locker, 3rd floor. My hands trembled slightly as I folded the napkin and slipped it into my coat. She had just given me a key. Not to a building, not to a file, but to Nathan's undoing. I spent the next 2 days planning. I knew Nathan's schedule by heart. Tuesdays, he left work at 6 p.m. sharp to hit his gym in the corporate complex next door. He always kept his blazer in a locker while he worked out. And he always changed in stall 3 like it was sacred. I didn't have access to the gym anymore, but I still had a company badge, one they hadn't deactivated. Yet. At 7:30 p.m. sharp on Tuesday, I walked in through the side entrance, head low, hoodie up. No one looked twice. I passed the turnstile, stepped into the locker room, and found locker 118. The padlock accepted the code. Ascendant 2020. Inside, a jacket, navy, sharp, Nathan's favorite, and in the inside pocket, the red USB. I held it for half a second, heartbeat pounding in my ears. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried not just data, but destiny. I didn't take it, not yet. I didn't need him to know it was missing. I brought a replica, same model, same color. I made the switch. Fast, clean, silent. I walked out of the building with a neutral face and a bomb in my bag. Back at my apartment, I didn't even take off my shoes before plugging it into my secure, air-gapped laptop. The password worked. The folder tree unfolded like a confession. Client files. Internal memos marked confidential, emails that had been deleted, but the most damning, an Excel sheet labeled MGT Inc. bonus map. It was a map of manipulated numbers, false projections, bonus justifications built on cooked data. Nathan had been lying to the board, padding his metrics, claiming success where there were failures. There were even bribes. Names, amounts, dates. He hadn't just wronged me. He had stolen from the company, from shareholders, from everyone. And now I had it all. The file was explosive, and I had no intention of keeping it quiet. When I walked back into Cormier and Tate Solutions after my suspension was lifted, the air felt heavier. Or maybe I was just breathing differently now. Deeper, sharper, hungrier. This wasn't my office anymore. It was a battlefield. And I wasn't here to make peace. Nathan welcomed me back with his usual smirk. Good to have you on the team again, Eliza, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder like nothing had ever happened. Like he hadn't orchestrated the most humiliating chapter of my career. I looked him in the eye and gave him the calmest smile I could muster. Glad to be back, sir. But what I really meant was, checkmate is coming. The first step in any good takedown, timing. You don't just drop a bomb, you place it where it'll do the most damage, and wait. At 9:13 a.m. that Friday, I drafted a message to the executive assistant of Veronica Hale, our CFO. I had thought long and hard about who to approach first. Not HR, they were compromised. Not the CEO, he was too cozy with Nathan. But Veronica? She was smart, cold, and hated inefficiency more than anything. She didn't care about politics. She cared about numbers. The subject line was simple. Ethics. Concern. Internal audit irregularities. The body read, 5 minutes of your time confidential. I have documentation that may affect quarterly projections and executive bonuses. It involves Nathan Kessler. She replied within 30 minutes. 1 p.m. Conference room 6C. Bring everything. Perfect. I spent the rest of the morning building a curated folder. Not everything, just enough. The manipulated spreadsheets showing false performance data. The email Nathan sent himself using my login credentials. The contract with metadata proving I authored it. The presentation file he claimed as his own. And one more thing, a USB copy of his private drive, including the infamous bonus map.xlsx, with salary adjustments tied to phantom client results. At 12:58 p.m., I walked into room 6C. Veronica was already there, sitting with her arms crossed and a pen in hand like she was waiting to mark up the truth. Start talking, she said. I slid the folder across the table. Everything in here has been verified. I have more, but this is what I thought you'd want first. She opened it and began scanning. Her eyes moved quickly. First confusion, then recognition, and finally, rage. Not emotional rage. Controlled, focused, calculating. Where did you get this USB? She asked, barely above a whisper. Nathan carries it in his jacket. I cloned it without removing the original. He doesn't know. You're aware this constitutes internal surveillance. I'm aware he's committing financial fraud, falsifying company reports, and has systematically targeted female employees who outperform him. Her jaw clenched. You're saying this is a pattern? I nodded. Ask Angela Tran, Priya Deshmukh, Madison Blake. I have their statements. I can bring them in. Veronica sat back, the pen still in her hand, now tapping against her notepad. If even half of this is true, she murmured, the board will tear him apart. That's the idea. She didn't thank me. She didn't offer comfort. But she did say one thing before I left. Don't talk to anyone, not even HR. If this comes out wrong, you go down with him. I nodded again. Understood. The weekend passed in silence. But the storm I'd triggered was moving underground. By Monday at 9:00 a.m., the first signs of the fallout began. Nathan didn't show up for his usual 8:30 power strut across the floor. At 9:47, Veronica's assistant walked swiftly past my desk, without looking at me, holding a sealed envelope. At 10:15, the IT department began locking down executive email access for a system-wide audit. By noon, whispers had turned into theories. Something was up. At 2:07 p.m., 2 security personnel walked into Nathan's office and shut the door. At 2:19, the door reopened, and Nathan stepped out, pale as a ghost, without his briefcase. At 2:24, he left the building. And by 3 hours, a company-wide email was sent. From the office of the CFO effective immediately, Nathan Kessler has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation into conduct violations. Further updates to follow. The office was silent. You could hear fingers hovering over keyboards, unsure whether to type or clap. I kept working. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. But inside me, something exhaled. Not victory. Not yet. Just validation. Nathan was the first domino, but I knew what came next. That evening, Angela messaged me. Angela, you did it. Me. It's only the beginning. Angela, they'll try to bury this, you know that, right? Me. Let them try. I've got more. Because here's the thing about rot, it spreads. And Nathan didn't do all this alone. I had names, emails, meetings. A whole internal thread of people who looked away, who signed off, who enabled him. Next on my list, the VP of HR, Margaret Wexley, the one who lost my complaint the first time. And the chief legal officer who sat in on that meeting and told me to take a few weeks to clear my head. They thought this was over, but I was just getting warmed up. The office might not have seen me as a threat before. Now? Now I was radioactive, and I planned to burn the whole rotten system down, one sanitized report at a time. The Monday after Nathan's removal, the office didn't return to normal. It calcified into something worse. There was no announcement of who would replace him. No new meetings, no transition emails, Just a hollowed-out corner office and a nervous tension humming in every hallway. The silence was deafening, and in that silence I could hear the whisper network roar. People stopped meeting my gaze in the break room. Some offered polite nods, but most acted like I was radioactive, not hostile. Not yet, just avoidant. Like being seen near me might drag them into whatever vortex I'd created, and maybe they weren't wrong. By Tuesday morning, I got called into a check-in with HR, not Margaret Wexley, our VP, but her assistant, someone I barely recognized. She smiled too much. "Eliza," she said, "we just wanted to touch base, make sure you're doing okay. We understand transitions like these can be unsettling." I tilted my head. Unsettling is when someone steals your work and tries to frame you for corporate misconduct. This is overdue. The smile didn't break, but her fingers twitched around her pen. "Right. Well, we're just encouraging all staff to keep communication lines open during this period, and we'd appreciate it if you didn't speak with others about Mr. Kessler's situation. You understand, it's for the integrity of the investigation." I leaned forward. "So, I should stay quiet. Again." "No, not what I meant. Just no speculation." I stood. "Got it. Don't rock the boat." And I left. That evening, I received an email from a name I hadn't seen in months, David Lamont, the firm's legal counsel. Subject: confidential inquiry. "Eliza, I'd like to have a brief word regarding your access to certain documents from last week. Let me know your availability." DL. This was it. The first real pushback. I replied with a time, Wednesday, 10 AM. But before I could even prepare, my inbox pinged again, this time internal chat. From Madison Blake MB. They're circling the wagons. Me. Legal, MB, and HR. Margaret's been in meetings nonstop. Something's brewing. Me. Do they know I have the vault? MB. They suspect, but they can't prove you took it. Not yet. Me. Then, we stay quiet. For now. MB. Heard from Priya. She's ready to talk. Me. Good. Line her up. I want them surrounded by ghosts. Wednesday morning, I walked into the legal office, hair down, black blazer pressed, and a thumb drive in my coat pocket. Not the real one, of course, just a decoy. David stood when I entered. He always had that tired look, like he'd been cleaning up other people's messes since birth. "Eliza," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Appreciate you making time. I figured you'd want to get ahead of something." He offered a tired smile. "I've been asked to review certain recent activities, specifically your access to executive documents not under your clearance." "You mean the folder that detailed internal fraud?" "Yeah, I saw that." He ignored the jab. "Look, Eliza, between us, I know you've been through a lot, and I'm not here to threaten you, but accessing a private drive, especially without IT clearance, puts the company at risk." "David, I didn't put the company at risk. Nathan did." He nodded, slowly. "But he's gone, and you're not." There it was. The line in the sand. I stood. "Then maybe you should ask why it took one employee to do what your whole legal department wouldn't." I didn't wait for a response. That night, I couldn't sleep. I knew what was coming. They wouldn't come for me with knives. They'd come with procedures. New performance reviews. Subtle reassignment of projects. A missed promotion. A quietly vanished bonus. The system was shifting, not collapsing, and I needed a bigger weapon. Angela had already given her statement. Priya, too. But I needed someone from inside. Someone high enough to see the rot, but far enough from the top to want it gone. Madison messaged me at midnight. MB. Margaret's pulling staff into private meetings tomorrow. No agenda. Me. They're vetting loyalty, trying to smoke out the cracks. MB. Then maybe it's time we widen them. We scheduled a call with Priya, and a second with a former assistant who'd left the firm in 2022 under personal reasons. She had once managed Nathan's calendar, and she still had a few juicy backups in her private Google Drive. Things no one thought to delete, including a 6-minute recording of Nathan during a late-night call talking about massaging numbers for Q2, and joking about how easy it is to frame the ones who don't fight back. By Thursday, I had everything I needed to push the story beyond corporate walls. At 7 p.m., I composed an email to a reporter I'd met once before, Kara Bentley from Business Beacon. She'd done an expose 2 years ago that took down a mid-level executive over a sexual harassment cover-up. She was sharp, and she liked documentation. I kept it short. Kara, this is Eliza Monroe. We met at the Career Women in Tech panel last year. I have a developing story about executive fraud, HR negligence, and a whistleblower cover-up inside one of the top firms in the city. I have recordings, files, and witnesses. Interested? She replied in under an hour. Send me what you have, and let's talk. That night, I stared out my window at the city below. 8 years ago, I had started at Cormier and Tate full of hope, believing hard work would be enough. Now I knew better. The system didn't reward virtue. It consumed it. But I wasn't naive anymore. I was armed. I was focused. And for the first time, since Nathan stole my work, I felt something deeper than anger, momentum. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about justice. And I was done waiting for someone else to serve it. The article dropped on a Monday. It wasn't buried in some obscure blog post or vague expose. It was a front-page story in Business Beacon's online morning edition, accompanied by a bold headline in all caps. Whistleblower unveils fraud, abuse. Inside Cormier and Tate Solutions, documents, recordings, and silenced voices speak out. Kara Bentley had done her homework. She didn't just write what I gave her. She investigated, confirmed, cross-referenced. The piece quoted 3 former employees anonymously, Angela, Priya, and the former assistant. It referenced time-stamped emails, embedded audio clips, and even a redacted screenshot from the bonusmap.xlsx file. Within the first hour, the article was shared over 6,000 times on LinkedIn. By noon, it was trending on X under #CTW whistleblower. And by 3 p.m., reporters were calling the company's front desk asking for statements. I didn't go into work that day. I knew better. Instead, I sat in my apartment with the blinds half closed, my phone on silent, and a mug of cold coffee I kept forgetting to drink. At 10:17 a.m., Madison messaged me. MB, Veronica just locked herself in her office with legal. Margaret's door is closed. HR looks like a funeral. Me, good. MB, they're scrambling. Press team's in chaos. You did it. Me, we did it. MB, no, this was you, and he knows. Me, Nathan, MB, he showed up outside the building, didn't come in, just stood there for a while, then left. It wasn't guilt, it was a warning. By mid-afternoon, I received a call from an unlisted number. I didn't answer. The voicemail that followed was short, male, and deliberate. You should stop while you're ahead, Eliza. You don't know the kind of people you're messing with. This wasn't supposed to go public. Click, no name, no context. But I didn't need one. They weren't threatening my life. Not yet. But they were threatening my peace, my anonymity, my sense of control. They wanted me to feel vulnerable again. Too late for that. I forwarded the voicemail to Kara and saved a copy to my encrypted drive. Later that evening, Kara published an update. Sources close to the matter indicate the whistleblower has received intimidation. This confirms the toxic culture described by insiders. Cormier and Tate Solutions has not responded to requests for comment. I smiled. For every move they made, I had a counter. Tuesday morning, I received an unexpected visitor, Madison in person. She showed up at my door in jeans and a leather jacket, looking both exhausted and on edge. They're going to throw someone under the bus, she said without greeting. I let her in. Let me guess. Margaret, she nodded. They're prepping her as the fall woman. Internal memo is being drafted. She's on medical leave by Friday. And Nathan? He's still under review, but rumor is he's lawyering up. They're trying to spin it as a rogue executive scenario. Classic damage control. She looked at me with something deeper than frustration. They think this ends with a few resignations, a press statement, some diversity seminars. I sat down. It doesn't. She shook her head. I want in deeper. Whatever you're planning next, I'm there. I studied her face. There was no hesitation. Then we do it right, I said. No more anonymous tips. No more behind-the-scenes leaks. We go public. You mean? I mean press conference, on record, with names, she exhaled. That'll paint a target on your back. I already have one. Wednesday, I received an email from Veronica Hale. Eliza, I won't pretend this situation is ideal, but I've reviewed the evidence and I want to speak, discreetly, in person. Lunch, 1 p.m., I'll come to you. VHI agreed. We met at a quiet restaurant off Westfield Avenue, the kind of place where no one wore a name tag and everyone minded their business. She arrived wearing all black, no makeup, and tension laced through every inch of her posture. I'm not here on behalf of the company, she said right away. Then who are you here for? Myself. She sipped her water. You're right about Nathan and Margaret, but this goes higher. I said nothing. Let her fill the space. 3 board members knew. Not the details, but the results. They saw his projections. They approved. Bonuses tied to obviously unsustainable numbers. Why? Because they benefited. And because they didn't want to believe the alternative. Which was? That someone like you could be right. Her eyes locked on mine. You embarrassed them. You exposed what they let fester. That's why you're dangerous. I didn't flinch. Then they should be scared. She nodded. They are. She reached into her bag and slid me a flash drive. This is my copy of our board reports from the last 6 quarters. Highlighted files show inconsistencies. You'll find notes. I left breadcrumbs. Why are you giving me this? Because I don't want to be part of the cover-up, and because the story isn't over. She stood to leave, then turned back one last time. You started a war. Eliza, don't stop halfway. By Thursday, my name was everywhere, not officially, but in whispers, in Slack threads, in private calls between executives trying to decide how to survive the scandal. They couldn't fire me. Not yet. Not without setting the press on fire, but they were planning something. I could feel it. Friday morning, I received a letter slid under my apartment door. No return address, no stamps, just one printed sentence on plain white paper. If you talk again, we'll talk louder. I stared at it for a full minute before feeding it into the shredder. Let them scream. I wasn't here to play quiet anymore. It aired on a Thursday night, prime time. 8 p.m. Kara Bentley, now no longer just a business columnist but the face of a breaking corporate scandal, sat across from me under studio lights with a backdrop of Cormier and Tate's iconic Skyline headquarters. Her voice was calm, measured, but every question cut like a scalpel. Eliza? She asked on camera. Why did you decide to come forward publicly? I looked into the lens. Not just at Kara, not at the studio crew, but at every executive, who once dismissed me as invisible. Because silence protects the powerful. And I was done being silent. That was the headline they ran with the next morning. Done being silent. Cormier and Tate whistleblower goes public, the fallout was swift and brutal. By Friday afternoon, 3 board members had stepped down. Margaret Wexley retired due to health concerns. Her press release didn't even mention the company name. Nathan Kessler was photographed leaving a law firm flanked by 2 attorneys, refusing to answer questions. Rumors of federal investigations swirled, and by Monday morning, the CEO himself had been forced to issue a statement. The executive leadership at Cormier and Tate takes full responsibility for the oversight failures that allowed these issues to persist. We are cooperating with all ongoing inquiries and remain committed to creating a transparent, accountable workplace. Empty words. Too late. Internally, departments were restructured, audits expanded, HR was gutted, the company's stock dipped, 8% within 2 days. But none of that gave me satisfaction. Not yet. A week later, I was summoned. Not to HR, not to legal, but to the top. Veronica Hale requested a private meeting in her office. I walked in wearing all black. A simple dress, a plain bag, no jewelry, just presence. She was already seated, a file open in front of her. Eliza, she said without lifting her gaze, you've made your point. I wasn't making a point. I was delivering a reckoning. She folded her hands. There's a proposal here. From the board. I said nothing. You return to work on your terms. Full autonomy, department head, new title. You'll lead the Ethics and Accountability Division. Direct report to the CFO, me. She finally looked up. Or, she added, you walk. And let the press keep bleeding us. It wasn't a threat. It was an offer. But I already knew my answer. I stood. I didn't start this war to sit at the same table, I said quietly. I came to burn it down. She narrowed her eyes. So, what do you want? I leaned forward, palms on her desk. I want every file Nathan altered to be disclosed to the board, unredacted. I want a formal apology to every employee silenced or pushed out in the last 5 years. And I want an independent watchdog with full access to your financials for the next 2 years. She blinked. That's not a demand, I added. That's my minimum. She sat back. And if we refuse? I smiled. You already know what I'm capable of. I didn't go back to Cormier and Tate. Instead, I helped found a nonprofit, Siren. Ethics, dedicated to supporting whistleblowers across corporate America. Angela joined as head of operations. Priya took over legal research. Madison? She left the company 2 months later and now runs our internal intel division. In under a year, we'd helped expose 6 more scandals, 3 settlements, 1 conviction. They called me dangerous on business blogs, a liability, a disruptor. I took it as a compliment. Months after the story broke, I received a letter, handwritten, no signature. But I knew who it was from the moment. I read the first line. You think you won, but all you did was shift the power somewhere else. Someone will always be in control, Eliza. Just not you. I folded the letter, slid it into a drawer, and locked it. Let them watch. Let them whisper. Because I wasn't here to play queen in a broken kingdom. I was here to torch the throne, and I had matches to spare.